Welcome, everyone, to Reimagining Capital in Washtenaw County, a community conversation starter. I'm Doug Weber, Chair of the Ann Arbor Area Community Foundation Board of Trustees. My ancestors first arrived in Washtenaw County in the mid-19th century. They were poor but industrious and hardworking German farmers who desired to be part of an American community that would welcome them and support them as they made a new life in a new country. Lots of changes have happened in our county in the last 170 years, but some things remain the same. People still come to Washtenaw County to join a community that encourages and supports their neighbors and fellow community members to make a better life for all. With that much said, I think everyone watching will join me in saying we are in a time like never before. We have an opportunity, even in the midst of this pandemic, to reimagine a new future for our community, a future that builds an even stronger community, one that is stronger, one that is more welcoming, and one that is ever more supportive of an ever more diverse group of citizens. There are so many ways to do that. As a community foundation, as your community foundation for Washtenaw County, we want to talk today from that role, as our community's dedicated endowment, the largest source of permanent funding specifically for our county, or what you might think of as the community savings account. Along with being a lifelong resident of Washtenaw County, I have been affiliated with the Community Foundation for many years, so I can confidently state that we, as an organization, have an opportunity to serve our community with even greater impact than we have up to this point. Where are we as a community? Where do we want to be? And what role does capital play in that? We're going to explore those big concepts today and invite your input along the way. To get started, I'm going to turn the program over to our CEO, Neil Hajra.
Thanks, Doug. As Doug said, today we want to explore what we can all do in service of community. And part of that means looking with fresh eyes at opportunities and challenges across our diverse community in Washtenaw County. How do community and capital intersect in Washtenaw County? Our community foundation is devoted to serving the entirety of Washtenaw County, and not just Ann Arbor. This pandemic has made more prominent the differences across our whole county, the inequities, along with opportunities to work together more effectively for all. As a place-based funder and a place-based organization, we have learned so much in these past 6 months, especially in partnership with individuals and institutions across all of Washtenaw. Our guiding principles have been to make data-driven decisions, to collaborate across sectors and across neighborhoods, to prioritize community-led programs, and to address emergency needs while also preparing to address recovery and the long-term impacts of this pandemic. So what are some examples of these principles that continue to inform where we are today and how we move forward? I am honored to serve as Vice Chair of the Washtenaw County Board of Health. Our community has an amazing expert leading our public health efforts, particularly during these challenging times. I've asked Jimena Lovelock to share some more information on where we are as a county and how we are responding.
Thank you, Neil, and thank you so much for your leadership on the Washtenaw County Board of Health, and we so appreciate the partnership with the Ann Arbor Area Community Foundation to support health equity in our county. The mission of the Washtenaw County Health Department is to assure, in partnership with the community, the conditions necessary for people to live healthy lives through prevention and protection programs. Our vision is a healthy community in which every resident enjoys the best possible state of health and well-being. Our local health department is grounded in the science of public health, which is focused on protecting and improving the health of people and their communities. It's different than medical care because public health interventions are meant to impact communities, not just individuals. Washtenaw County Health Department has the local responsibility to assess and monitor health. This means we have to know what our local health looks like and when it's changing. It also includes controlling outbreaks, ensuring availability of safe food and water, strengthening access to healthcare, developing and communicating health promotion information, and sharing resources to live healthy lives. Washtenaw County is one of the most prosperous counties in Michigan and is often considered a healthy place to live, work, learn, and play. But we have known for quite some time that not everyone is sharing in these benefits. While life expectancy for both white and Black residents in Washtenaw County has improved over time, we see that life expectancy for Black residents is still 10 years less than that for white residents. For Latinx residents in Washtenaw County, life expectancy is 16 years less than that of white residents. For the past 5 years, Washtenaw County Health Department has focused on more intentional community engagement in order to identify and reduce health inequities in our county. Working with 6 neighborhoods and population groups that have been historically marginalized and experience various health inequities, we are working in partnership with community members and engaging community voice to identify health priorities. This requires fostering inclusive environments in which community members can use their voice and speak as full partners in paving the future. Listening to and engaging with community voice must be nurtured and sustained with long-term partnerships. Working to address health equity is a central function of the health department. We are committed to working with community members and partners to address the factors that influence health. Our work toward health equity and social justice is guided by several principles, including naming racism and other isms as a barrier to health equity and social justice. Washtenaw County Health Department has been at the forefront of the COVID-19 response for more than 6 months. Even before Washtenaw County had its first confirmed case on March 12th, Health Department staff were consulting with state health officials and the CDC, evaluating suspect cases, and preparing for this public health emergency. The Health Department has been the main source of reliable local information related to COVID-19, including data and surveillance to track the number of cases, hospitalizations, and sadly, deaths. With a growing number of cases in the spring showing that COVID-19 was present in every zip code in Washtenaw County, there was enough data to disaggregate by race and ethnicity, as well as zip codes. The Health Department was among the first in the nation to share COVID-19 case data by race and ethnicity, and issued a press release in early April calling attention to the disparate impacts we were seeing in the African American community, as well as in the 48197 and 48198 zip codes. While 12% of Washtenaw County residents identify as African American or Black, they represent 26% of confirmed COVID-19 cases, 39% of hospitalizations, and 30% of deaths. In addition, 46% of confirmed COVID-19 cases are residents of the 48197 and 48198 zip codes in Ypsilanti and Ypsilanti Township, where 29% of the county's population live. In this press release, we named structural and institutional racism as a contributing factor to these disparities. That is played out in less access to health care, unequal treatment when seeking health care, fewer protections for essential and service workers, housing conditions, and the impact of chronic stress experienced by communities of color as a direct result of discrimination and racism. For the health department, it was important to share this data and use it as a call to action, including for our own COVID-19 response and ongoing work. So how has the health department responded and centered health equity during COVID-19? While the health department is not a direct provider of COVID-19 testing, we worked collaboratively with our healthcare systems and Packard Health to bring more COVID-19 testing to the Ypsilanti and Ypsilanti Township areas as quickly as possible. Thanks to the support of St. Joseph Mercy Health System and Michigan Medicine, there were a total of 5 community pop-up testing clinics provided in these geographic areas in May. In addition, Packard Health was able to stand up an ongoing community testing site in Ypsilanti that started in May and continues to provide testing in Ypsilanti every day of the week. We have also been able to provide pop-up clinics in Whitmore Lake and Manchester. These efforts resulted in approximately 1,600 community members getting tested for COVID-19. We have also developed and continue to develop COVID-19 prevention materials, resources, and messaging in multiple languages and engage with community members, including our Community Voices for Health Equity Leadership team, to help design and amplify these messages at the community level. We have developed a robust case investigation and contact tracing model. While contact tracing is nothing new to our health department, this has been a priority since it is a key strategy to contain the spread of COVID-19 or any infectious disease. Our staff contact every confirmed case during this process and have had personal conversations with an estimated 12,000 residents about their illness or exposure. This has included providing guidance and support related to isolation and quarantine, and providing housing for those who needed a safe place to stay, including homeless individuals. We have provided almost 25,000 pieces of personal protective equipment, or PPE, to these facilities that were particularly in need of supplies and are outside of the hospital systems. This distribution included our long-term care facilities and nursing homes that were hit so hard with COVID-19, medical specialty practices, group homes, homeless shelters, and other community organizations. Our health department has provided guidance to essential service providers and then businesses that reopened after the stay home, stay safe order was lifted to ensure they were following the governor's executive orders and putting procedures in place to protect the safety and health of their employees. And finally, and most importantly, in recognition that the COVID-19 crisis has exacerbated existing racial inequities and further highlighted racism as a root cause of poor health outcomes that continue to disproportionately cause illness and death among people and communities of color, the health department worked with its Board of Health to pass a resolution declaring racism a public health crisis at the end of June. Among other commitments, the health department and Board of Health commit to working in full partnership with community members, organizations, and leaders who are engaged in anti-racist action, addressing community-defined problems using community-driven solutions. As we move into the fall, the health department continues to monitor COVID-19 cases locally. We are seeing changes from the early spring, which can be seen in our new 2-week snapshots that are available on our website. While the proportion of cases among African Americans has decreased, we are now seeing an increase of cases in the Latinx community. We continue to see the majority of cases in the 48197 and 48198 zip codes, and now are seeing a greater impact on young people. Fortunately, our hospitalization rates have decreased significantly since the spring. Our COVID response continues into the fall with the following priorities. We will continue to support expanded testing for all and where most needed. The health department continues to work with private labs, our health systems, and the state to increase community testing capacity, both through ongoing testing sites and pop-up clinics. We will engage in ongoing community engagement and health equity response to ensure that COVID-19 information, resources, and services are accessible and available to those populations and geographic areas most impacted. We are preparing for mass vaccination efforts when a COVID-19 vaccine becomes available and ensuring its equitable distribution. Partnerships, communication, and coordination are an ongoing priority. COVID-19 affects all aspects of our community and requires all sectors to work together to reduce risk and keep each other safe. The health department will continue to provide guidance for businesses, nonprofit organizations, restaurants, our K-12 schools and universities to protect the health of all our community members. Providing and ensuring critical services and community education is a final priority. We are focusing on those services that are most critical during this time to help people maintain health and manage chronic conditions. That includes flu vaccination and other immunizations, women, infant, and children nutritional program, and other services that provide access to healthy foods, maternal infant health services to keep pregnant women and infants healthy, family planning, tobacco and vaping education and cessation, and access to health care through insurance enrollment, telehealth, and community health workers. We know this has been a difficult time. COVID-19 has challenged us in many ways, individually and as a community. Addressing racism as a public health crisis will require ongoing community engagement, partnerships, and a long-term investment. Washtenaw County Health Department is committed to doing that work and strengthening even further its community-engaged health equity efforts. I could never have imagined what I would be facing in my first year as health officer. I am so grateful to our staff who have worked tirelessly during the pandemic and have provided compassionate support to those with COVID-19 and their loved ones, as well as to our community partners who have continued to provide critical services during this time. Stay well and stay safe.
I'm Betsy Petoskey, Vice Chair of the Community Foundation. I'd like to briefly share with you how the Community Foundation has responded to the COVID crisis. In total, we've distributed more than $1.4 million into the community over the past 6 months. Before I give you a few examples of this funding, I want to share how, beyond just granting dollars, we value action. We want to be a resource for the community, so we increased our communications and created a COVID webpage with resources to share how we're using data, like some of you just heard about from Jimena. We've also relied on what we call community voice, or listening to the community about what it wants, and supporting actions already being taken by leaders within specific neighborhoods and groups. Here are some key efforts we undertook these past few months, and I encourage you to look at our website for more details. We made grants for operating support. We prioritized support for communities disproportionately affected by the pandemic and to organizations led by members of those communities. We focused on systems level grants and vulnerable seniors and children. We brought together dozens of people, virtually of course, to gather input and to address gaps in service. Because thousands of community members have invested in Washtenaw County through endowment gifts, large and small, over the decades, we were able to respond during this crisis with more than $1.4 million in just 6 months.
On behalf of the entire Community Foundation Board and in partnership with its staff, we share this report of activities from a very real sense of responsibility. As the Community Foundation continues to experience rapid growth, recently surpassing $150 million in assets, we want to better leverage every resource at our disposal, as well as our leadership in service of the community we all love.
We are committed to planning for and responding to the longer-term impacts of this pandemic across our diverse communities within Washtenaw. We will continue our approach of working with our community to listen and learn from local residents, their solutions for challenges, and their aspirations and strengths. We're now going to hear from 3 neighborhood leaders. Neil, would you please introduce our esteemed panel?
Thanks, Betsy, and thanks so much, Doug. It is an esteemed panel indeed. Today, we have over 400 people who have registered and asked for recordings of the session and several hundred who are with us live. Welcome, and I know that everyone didn't sign up to see me speak, but rather to hear from the dynamic leaders we have lined up. As you've already heard, the Ann Arbor Area Community Foundation is dedicated to serving the entirety of Washtenaw County and listening to residents of our many diverse neighborhoods and communities. So I'm excited for all of us to hear now from a panel of neighborhood leaders. Next to me, to my immediate right, I have Joanne McCullum, president of the New West Willow Neighborhood Association and a member of our Ypsilanti Area Community Fund Advisory Committee. In the middle seat is Eileen Rower, director of the Riverfolk Music and Arts Organization based in Manchester. And finally, on the last seat in the row is Bonnie Billups, the executive director of Peace Neighborhood Center. Bonnie, Eileen, Joanne, thanks so much for joining us today. I'm looking forward to the conversation. We're going to pose a few questions and have you answer them in round-robin format, and our goal is to have everyone listening in and everyone watching the recordings to get to know you a little bit better as leaders and to get to know more about your communities. And so Bonnie, we're going to kick things off with you. And by the way, for the audience, we will be sharing contact information for each of the three organizations represented by our leaders today so that you can follow up with them directly after these conversations. So Bonnie, my first question is, how has the Peace neighborhood community mobilized in the face of such a challenging pandemic?
Great question, Neil, and thanks for that. Right away, we knew that there were three areas on March the 12th or 13th when everything shut down. We knew that there were three areas that we needed to be concerned about. First was academic support for young people. Then there was food insecurity. And then there was basic emergency needs that people would have, transportation, food things, utility help, all of that kind of stuff. We started right away with academic support stuff, right? Well, actually with food insecurity stuff. We worked with the Ann Arbor Public Schools and others to identify not just Peace Neighborhood Center stuff, but neighbors all on the west side of Ann Arbor. Probably 7 or 8 different neighborhoods that we identified that had pockets of people who were on, young people who were on free or reduced lunch. With that, we talked to all of those managers of those complexes and worked at making an agreement so that we could get buses in to bring emergency food. We also continued our work with food gatherers, which is that we've had a regular annual Friday produce delivery service that's happened with them, distribution on the west side of Ann Arbor. We expanded that and continued that. And then we looked at the ability to buy gift cards to allow families who were in need to buy food when presented to us. The other area was academic support. So soon in the month of April, we started right away not only distributing some of our own equipment to families, but helping families get online and then seeing kids in person. Kids who we knew would have a hard time with the virtual learning platform and getting on. And that's continued. So that started, and then our whole summer program was based upon supporting virtual learning and following the Ann Arbor Public Schools summer learning program. And now we move into the fall where we have 150 young people registered, and we're doing virtual learning in person at our 3 centers. So those things happen, along with the fact that we wanted to look at the needs that would come up for people to have financial assistance. So we provided utility support, rent support, car repairs, child care support, all of those kind of things. The fourth thing that came up that later on in the pandemic was support for mental health services for people. We found a tremendous amount of people who were feeling anxious, anxiety, issues, depression, increase of not only that's in our children who are in programs, but also with parents. So that's been another area that we've been addressing.
Thanks, Bonnie. So I'm blown away by the comprehensive response that your community has mobilized around. And I wanted to highlight something you mentioned, which is mental health. I feel like in more recent years, our communities have been better at actually destigmatizing mental health issues, shining a spotlight on them, and doing something about it. So I'd love your observation on how important that is.
Yeah, especially in the Black and brown community, mental health has a stigma that, everything's okay, you can deal with it, you don't really need help. And to get families and young people to understand what anxiety is, what depression is, and what other even more severe mental health issues and concerns we might need to address has been a key part of what's happened over the period of this pandemic. So,
thank you so much, Bonnie. And Eileen, I'd love to go to you next and pose the same question. How has your community in the Manchester area mobilized in the face of this really challenging pandemic?
Sure, Neil. Thank you so much for having us here today. Believe it or not, Manchester, when the pandemic hit, was still reeling from the past two recessions that occurred in 2008 and then going way back to the mid-'80s. We still have empty storefronts in our community. We still have businesses that try to make a go at it and just can't do it. We still have a lot of turnover in our community residents and in the schools. So there's still a lot of issues in Manchester. So when the pandemic hit, as an arts organization, the first thing that we were concerned about was the safety, the physical safety of our clients, of the students that we teach, and the people that attend our events. So as with most arts organizations, we had to completely shut down all of our public events, which included a monthly blacksmith shop concert, our summertime gazebo concerts. We even had started a quarterly community dance to involve the whole community to come learn how to dance in different styles. But our music lessons, we turned those to online. We wanted to make sure that the students had something regular that they could keep going. We knew that they weren't going to be going to school, and music lessons tend to provide a consistency for young students that was so needed at that time. The next thing that we needed to do, we wanted to make sure that we were serving the original founders' mission, which was to engage the community in music and arts experiences which nurture creativity and promote cultural diversity. We knew we couldn't do that with further financial assistance. So we reached out to Creative Washtenaw Aid, which was started by the Arts Alliance, who was able to provide us immediate assistance to tie us over until other aid became available, such as the MCACA grant emergency funding, which we were also able to obtain. Having that extra funding helped us to pivot our programs to continue the online lessons, but to also start a live stream series, a weekly live stream series of concerts for our community, and to bring music into our neighborhoods directly to the people. We also started thinking about seeking out partnerships and programming that would serve the mission and support our trajectory and tie the needs of the community. There were still people in isolation, there was people experiencing food insecurity, there was lack of reliable internet. We wanted to be able to help combat loneliness and certainly tackle some of the health issues that people were experiencing, including the mental health issues that you just mentioned. So those were our goals during that time of when the pandemic hit.
So Eileen, that's a lot of really critical work, and I want to pick up on the theme you mentioned. Everywhere I turn, I think people are realizing that broadband and internet connectivity, it's not a nice to have. I mean, now more than ever, it's a must have, right?
Absolutely. There are so many people that are having spotty internet connections and maybe even not having reliable devices or reliable service. So that is definitely an issue across.
Thanks so much, Eileen. Appreciate it. Joanne, let's turn to you next. And I want to pose the same question on how has your neighborhood mobilized in the face of a really challenging pandemic?
Sure, Neil. So the New West Willow Neighborhood Association has been an anchor for West Willow for over 30 years. And that's where we began. We began with the association with reaching out to the neighbors by phone calls, by nextdoor.com, and by our association Facebook. We want to make sure that people were connecting to one another and that we were connecting to them too. So we also reached out to agencies in the county to get help with resources and to give out cleaning supplies, which is what we heard was mostly needed, and masks. So we were able to give out enough for over 600 families. And then we opened, we had 3 little free libraries, and we changed one into a little free pantry. And it's right in front of our bus shelter, in front of our community center. We know that people frequent that bus stop, so there's at least 30 families that benefit from that on a weekly basis. We started Zoom meetings because we know people love meeting in the community. They've been doing it for over 30 years, so we didn't want them to have that left open. So we also worked with United Way to get a grant to pay over 50 bills for families to keep their internet on, to keep them in their house, car insurance, food, and things like that. Also at our Community Resource Center, we opened the doors for the Ypsilanti Community School and food gatherers to give out breakfast and lunch for the students. We have a tool lending library that became very busy because people were at home. So they wanted to borrow tools, so we opened that up for them, and we're actually got a grant to get more tools too, because we found it's very much needed. We also have a lawn program, and we help 24 seniors with getting their lawns cut on a regular basis. So that's how we mobilized during this time.
Joanne, you've got so many fronts covered. It's really amazing. And I'm glad you mentioned the United Way. I just want to observe that they've been a great partner of ours. We have a lot of confidence in the work that they're doing. And I'm not surprised to hear that they played a really positive role with you. So, Eileen and I talked about broadband connectivity, but what I hear from you is like person-to-person connectivity is the other side of the equation. And it sounds like that's really important for you to maintain in order to serve residents in your neighborhood.
Absolutely. That is very important.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Joanne. Let's shift gears a little bit, guys, but actually build on what we just talked about. So, Eileen, I'm going to start with you. Let's be optimistic. Let's look forward a little bit. What's a point of pride or points of pride that have emerged in your community over the last few months?
Sure. I am so proud of the board that supports our organization. It's an all-volunteer board, and every single person has contributed to this transition, from our board president, who used his own letterpress printing machine to make posters for our live stream series, to his wife, who made masks that had our logo on them that we sent out to anybody who donated during the live stream, to another board member who's got graphic designing experience, and she helped us update our Facebook page and our website. And then we had another board member that was in charge of making sure that all the thank you notes went out in a timely manner. That live stream series, we were able to connect with over 22,000 viewers across the world. We had over 40 musicians participate in 19 weeks of this live stream series. And every single week, there were viewers that were thanking us for consistently having a place that they could meet with the musicians that they love, with friends that they haven't been able to speak to, with making new friends, people that they didn't know across the world. We had people from all over the United States tuning in and watching this series. So it was really a wonderful moment to see us bringing so many people together, not only from our own little town of Manchester, but across the world. And it really spoke to our mission of connecting people, and then also showing them that the arts can be a moment of hope, can be an avenue of hope and innovation and creativity, a way for people to come together to come up with new ideas.
Thanks, Eileen. And I'm really inspired by your point about the role of the arts. There's sometimes a misperception that arts are only for elite, and it's definitely not a must-have. And yet when we talk about mental health, like Bonnie has, when we've talked about connectivity between people, like Joanne has, it seems to me that the arts are a great unifier along all those lines.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Eileen. Joanne, we're going to turn to you next, and we're going to ask the same question. So what's a point of pride that's emerged in West Willow over these last few months?
Yes. In West Willow, the neighbors have been so humble, and so many times it's really kind of bringing me to tears. But they were so humble in helping one another and in letting us know what they need, because that's really important. We were having agencies and counties, which was wonderful, saying, what do you need? And I want to make sure that the neighbors get what they need. And they let us know exactly what they need. So a lot of the people that were showing up for cleaning supplies and things like that, you need to stay in your car for safety. Well, some people, they don't have a car or they couldn't use it at the time. They would bring their neighbors there to get supplies. And sometimes they would pick it up for their neighbors and drop it off to their neighbors. So just the fact that the residents were so humble and willing to help one another and make sure no one fell through the crack, that's a point of pride for West Willow.
That's fantastic, Joanne. And one thing that's really struck me about your work is how it's not any one thing. It's 15 and 20 different ways of helping people. And I think we all fall into the trap of finding that silver bullet. What's the one thing we can do to make everything better? But it sounds to me like your answer is, what are the 20 things you have to do to make things better, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I feel like instead of shying away from it, maybe we should just embrace that we have to do many things well to help people.
Absolutely. You're
Yeah.
right, Neil.
Thanks for your service, Joanne. Appreciate
Thanks.
it.
Okay.
Bonnie, let's turn to you. What's a point of pride for the Peace neighborhood community that's emerged these last few months?
Yeah, there are many things. I'm extremely proud of the fact that the community circled around to assist others who they knew would have issues or have problems during this pandemic. We had people who, of course, we had United Way and the Rotary and other people who gave us grants, but I'm extremely proud of the people who said, I have this stimulus check that I don't necessarily need that could help somebody else. The amount of people who knew that our summer would be different for families and for kids, who said, let me give you guys some extra funds to be able to address the emerging things that are going to come up. I'm extremely proud of all of our young people in our programs who've been making this adjustment of virtual learning, but not only that, of figuring out new ways to socialize and support each other. I'm extremely proud of our staff and our board of directors, and just the community in totality. I mean, we live in a wonderful county, and it's wonderful to see that all three of our agencies have benefited from people who've looked out to say, what can we do to assist others? And that's exciting, and that makes me get up every day and fight this battle every day to make sure that we're assisting people at their need.
I love it, Bonnie, and I don't want to diminish the challenges we have going forward, but one thing I'm hearing is maybe there are new ways of thinking, maybe there are silver linings, maybe there are new awarenesses that are arising out of this pandemic that we can leverage into positive impact.
Yeah, I think the pandemic has, of course, made us aware of the disparities between people of color and people who are white. With healthcare, with economics, we're learning in this county about the issues of fair housing and housing possibilities, of the justice system for this county for people who are of color. So there's a lot of things that people are now even more aware of, and that people are circling around saying, how can we assist to make things better for our neighbors and for our brothers and sisters? And for somebody who maybe I don't walk in the same shoes, but I know I need to support in some ways, because we're all together, we're going to make this great. And if without that, we're not going to be able to make the greatness that we could be as a community.
I love that vision, Bonnie. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, Joanne, I'm going to let you lead off with the last question we've got for the panel today. And that is, we're going to have hundreds of people watching this now and watching the recording. So what are ways the rest of us in the community, individuals, can step up and help you advance the success of your residents in your neighborhood?
Sure. Well, one of the things I think is very high priority is connecting with the community, with the members. And we have the social media. We have nextdoor.com. We have the Facebook. We have phones. But we need to find a way to connect with every household in the community. And one of the ways that we feel would be successful is with a newsletter to send to each household. So we would need people that are good at those kinds of things, at marketing, at setting up a newsletter, funds for the newsletter to send to the household. And that is something that would be helpful for West Willow, because then we could give information for each household on things that are happening not only in our community, but resources for them to reach out to. So that would be very helpful for our community in West Willow.
So we've heard how important connectivity is, and I think you've just teed up a really specific piece of action where people can step up and offer their expertise and their resources, and it's one more way you can advance the success of folks in your neighborhood, right?
Absolutely. You're correct.
Thanks so much, Joanne.
Okay.
Hey, Bonnie, how about you? How can folks throughout Washtenaw County step up and help with the success of the Peace Neighborhood community?
Sure. If it wasn't a pandemic, we would say that we always have a need for volunteers to work as one-on-one with kids as tutors and as mentors. And we've sort of put a brake pedal on that for a little bit just to make sure that everybody stays safe. But we do have opportunities. Some of the opportunities right now are with our food distribution assistance. So on Fridays, we need people to help for a couple hours with food distribution. That impacts a number of families who are able to come in and shop and pick out things and items that they need. The other opportunities are on Mondays and Thursdays when we act as a distribution site for school lunch, school meal programs for the Ann Arbor Public Schools. And we deliver not only to our 3 sites, but also some of the neighbors who aren't near a community center. So that could be of assistance. One of the other ways, I think, at this point in time is to make sure that you're looking out for people who you live near. Not just the Peace family, but everybody in general. I think this has been a period of time where we've been able to reflect and understand that we're all connected, and how can we assist others to hear their story and to assist them and be aware. Turn up your, not spidey senses, but your spiritual sense to be able to connect with other people and to be able to be of assistance and to just be good.
Thanks, Bonnie. And I know a lot of people want to be good, but when we talk about volunteering, I hear them say, so if you start academic tutoring in a few months, well, I've never tutored a kid before. I'm not trained how to do that. Or what do you mean food distribution? So I want you to speak just for a minute about, that it's really not as hard as it might seem to folks who haven't done it before. Exactly right. It's not a hard job, and your willingness to come and be of assistance is part of the first hurdle. The other stuff is not brain surgery. It's meeting a need and knowing that everything counts. We talk about, one of the things I tell people about is planting seeds, right? Planting seeds, watering the garden, and something blossoms eventually. This is part of that process of planting seeds. And your seed is just as important, and your pulling of the weeds, be it serving people food, be it tutoring a kid, which is not as hard as you think it is, except the new math. The new math can be a little hard. It's not as difficult as you would think it would be. Everybody has something to offer. It just has to be the right time and the right thing when we as organizations need it. Sure. Thank you, Bonnie, for everything you and Peace Neighborhood Center are doing. Eileen, I'm going to give you the last word with the last question. And so I'd love to hear from you. How can the rest of the Washtenaw community step up and help your community succeed?
So as an arts organization, we really believe, as most artists across the nation do, that we cannot solve challenges and get ourselves out of trouble without grit, persistence, patience, innovative ideas, and hope. All of these values are provided through arts education, arts and music education. And what we strive for at Riverfolk is to make sure and ensure that every household in our community has access to the arts, either through education, through exposure, through some sort of activity they can attend or that they can find online, on TV, on whatever devices they have. So we want help ensuring that can become a reality in our community. Because again, as I started, our community is still reeling from the past 2 recessions. We're not going to get out of that. We're not going to get out of this. In fact, a majority of the country is not going to get out of this without those innovative ideas. And again, artists believe that those innovative ideas come from working through art projects, working through a music piece, attending a concert where a piece has given you hope. It allows you to see things in different perspectives. It gives you skills that can lead to application in other fields. You can educate about other cultures through the arts. All of these skills are so necessary right now. And Riverfolk wants to make sure that our community has access to all of this.
Thanks so much, Eileen. And for folks inspired by what you just said and who want to take action, they can contact your organization, right, through the information we'll share to maybe reach out to you and talk more together about what can be done.
Absolutely. And if you don't want to contact us, if that's a little scary, you can just come on to our Facebook page and share our live streams, share our programming, find somebody that needs a little music or art in their life and share it.
Nice. Thank you, Eileen. And listen, so we didn't have enough time together for folks to really get to know you guys and really hear what's going on, but I appreciate you all 3 of you being willing to just share and give a snapshot to folks listening as to what's going on in all corners of Washtenaw. So Joanne, Eileen, and Bonnie, thanks so much for your wisdom and for your leadership. We really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And now we actually want to hear, in addition to the panelists, we want to hear from the folks who are tuning in live. This program is far from over, and I promise that you don't want to miss what's yet to come, especially hearing from more nonprofit leaders like Jamal Bufford and Daryl Johnson. So we're going to open up the chat window for a few minutes to hear from you, and I want you to think about a few specific questions. How has your neighborhood mobilized? What makes you proud of your community during this crisis? Or how can others support your neighborhood success? Since we have a lot of folks weighing in, please be sure to identify your neighborhood or geography when you respond. What will happen next is we will carefully review all of your feedback in the coming days, and we're going to share some of it back out through blogs and other channels. So thanks to all of you for taking some time to next respond in the chat, and I'll join you again in a few minutes. I am a proud, lifelong resident of Washtenaw County. I'm a product of our public schools, as are my children. I have the amazing privilege of helping to steward our community's broadest and largest endowment, dedicated to Washtenaw County as a whole. But I know I cannot begin to speak for everyone in our community, and not just me personally, but professionally as well. As this pandemic has shined a brighter light on inequities that have long existed across our society and right here in Washtenaw County, I want to acknowledge the paradox that is philanthropy. The Community Foundation is a financial institution based on access to capital that is reflective of economic inequities and access to resources that simply have not been equal for all. The paradox is that while we are a part of a system that is itself reflective of inequities, as a community foundation, we have the opportunity to be more nimble, to respond to our community, to serve our community. We can harness the power of philanthropy for more good in Washtenaw County. So how might we reimagine capital and more effectively use our resources? The good news is we actually have been on this path for several years prior to the pandemic. Because we were already in the process of reimagining our service to the community, I am excited to share some of our emerging efforts to do more and to do better for all residents of Washtenaw County. And while we're talking about reimagining capital, I actually want to start with the feedback that you've given us already during this live session. During Jimena's remarks, the #1 piece of feedback was that you wanted to make sure public health and institutions in general were attending to disparities of health based on race and zip code. I want to assure you that that's exactly how the foundation is focusing not just on the pandemic response, but the long recovery to follow, as well as the investing that I'm going to talk to you about next. Another question we posed to you was what does local investing mean to you? And one of the trends that came out of your responses a few minutes ago was that it was very important that any local investing have a direct and measurable impact on families and individuals. You'll hear in a few minutes as I talk about our new reimagination of capital, everything that we're doing is exactly in service of that goal. Better serving families in Washtenaw County, better serving individuals and uplifting them and helping them realize their full potential. That's the goal we're working towards through all the tools we have at our disposal. So one of the ways we want to reimagine capital is to use our endowment differently. We have begun doing that through something called impact investing. So what is impact investing? Well, let's start with the basics. Every year, our foundation expends 5% of endowed assets in the form of grants and scholarships. This has by and large been our core model since our inception in 1963. So the 5% annual payout model ensures that our endowed funds will remain permanent and maintain their spending power over time. We take this obligation very seriously since it's a promise we've made to over 15,000 donors who have contributed to the foundation over the years, and we will keep that promise. 5% may not seem like a lot, but over time, it means that we distribute more than the original value of every single donation to a permanent fund. It's literally a gift that keeps on giving and giving forever. We want to use our growing endowment for more impact. It's not enough to grow. We also want to squeeze more impact out of every dollar under our stewardship. So it's fair to ask, and many have, what happens with the other 95% that we don't spend out every year? Traditionally, like most community foundations, we focused on strong and stable returns by investing globally through a diversified investment portfolio. In an effort to increase our mission-based impact in Washtenaw County, we are now starting to direct some of these other 95% of assets to investments within Washtenaw County. To put it differently, on top of being a grant maker and a scholarship provider, we're now adding a third line of work, local mission-based investor, to our list of core activities. Following several years of R&D and some pilot programs, in 2019, our board passed our first ever impact investing policy intended to move us from aspiration to reality to squeeze more and more impact out of our permanent assets. In fact, in the past year, we have already committed over $1 million locally through our new impact investing efforts. Our first ever investment was through a product known as Community Capital Management Bond Fund that focuses on affordable housing. CCM is a national product that allows for local targeting of investments. In our case, the fund manager has committed to deploying 100% of our commitment into Washtenaw County directly over the next few years. CCM bonds support affordable home ownership to low and moderate income borrowers and renters as well, including workforce housing and investing in opportunities that promote affordable home ownership and access to quality living. We also receive ongoing data from CCM regarding where our investments specifically go within Washtenaw, as well as community-level data related to the location of each investment. While this first ever local impact investment is a great step forward, the more we did it, the more we realized that we needed to learn more about our own community. We had to build and develop a more comprehensive picture of how capital flows in Washtenaw County and how the foundation can help it flow more equitably. As a data-driven organization, this lack of data inspired us to more action. So in 2019, we partnered with the Ralph C. Wilson Jr. Foundation to commission our community's first ever comprehensive body of research on how investment capital flows within our community. This research has not been done before, and we want to bring to light opportunities to invest locally and also understand better what local businesses need to be successful in the long run. This research, consisting of 3 related bodies of work, was conducted by the Urban Institute, Revalue Investing, and Entry Point. Revalue and Entry Point are both excellent, outstanding local companies that bring national level expertise to data and investing, and we're really excited to have worked with them. The very act of all of us doing this research revealed a lot about opportunities to invest locally and also the infrastructure we need and can build together to develop a more inclusive and equitable local economy that enables more residents of Washtenaw County to thrive. So I want all of you to stay tuned because we're putting the finishing touches on our research, and those reports will be released later this fall. In the meantime, our work in this area has already led to a second local impact investment by the foundation in addition to the CCM Bond Fund. We're pleased to announce today an investment in Michigan Women Forward. We're proud to be the very first community foundation in the entire state of Michigan to make an investment in Michigan Women Forward. Our investment will enable MWF to create a Washtenaw-specific initiative that supports women-led businesses while prioritizing Ypsilanti. We're so excited about this work, and while our recent steps forward through the CCM Bond Fund, New Capital Research, and Michigan Women's Forward are very exciting, I don't want you to leave with the impression that these are our only tools for addressing inequity. Far from it. More specifically, we've been working for years to reduce racial inequity within Washtenaw County. Now we know this is a deeply held value by all of you, as evidenced by your feedback throughout this session. I'm the Vice Chair of the Washtenaw County Board of Health, and I'm so proud that Public Health declared racism as a public health crisis, and I do want to thank Jimena for her remarks and her leadership in moving our entire community forward. I'm also proud of the Foundation's work to address racial inequity and need to acknowledge that much more work needs to be done by us to help those who need it the most. Well before my time, the trailblazers for the Community Foundation were local Black leaders who founded our African American Endowment Fund, which has been making a meaningful impact for 25 years and will celebrate that amazing milestone with an event, hopefully, in 2021. Our Community Scholarship Program launched in 2015 with the goal of increasing college graduation rates for local students of color, first-generation college students, and Pell-eligible students. This program is being actively studied by many other foundations across the country because of our unusual success in getting our incredible scholars not just to college, but through college. Each scholar receives a dedicated college success coach for the duration of their college time, and they also receive multi-year funding. In fact, to date, we have committed $1 million in scholarships for the 50 scholars under the Community Scholarship Program, and we already have our first graduates. And for several years now, we've been proud to invest in Nonprofit Enterprise at Work's outstanding Leaders of Color Fellowship Program known as Champions for Change. Nonprofit Enterprise at Work has been a trailblazer, an important one locally, and we're proud to provide much needed support for their efforts. And our work doesn't stop with what I've described to you. In fact, 2 years ago, a donor approached us wanting to explore more ways to enhance educational success of local young Black men through a scholarship program. Instead, we suggested that the donor fund work for us to hear straight from young men what they wanted for themselves and how to support their aspirations. We partnered with Washtenaw, My Brother's Keeper, or WMBK, which is our community's local chapter of a national movement to address persistent opportunity gaps facing boys and young men of color and to ensure that all youth can reach their full potential. Our partnership with WMBK is to uncover and lift up the experiences, the hopes, the desires, and the assets of young Black men in our community. We felt strongly that any endowed fund at the foundation seeking to support young Black men should center goals and aspirations of those that we're actually seeking to serve. Our community is fortunate to have the leadership of WMBK and young Black men, such as the ones featured in a new album and forthcoming documentary. We now invite you, in the words of WMBK Steering Committee member Rod Wallace, to experience, and I quote, the collage of thoughts, conflicts, issues, and worries that young men experience in our community through this documentary clip and a song feature.
My name is Jamal Bufford, project specialist for Washtenaw County, My Brother's Keeper. We have this media project that we are working on currently. We're gonna call it Formula 734. It is a multimedia type of project. So there's music involved, there's film involved. We want intergenerational music camaraderie. So we're doing a compilation album, and at the end we want to have a short documentary film showing the process of these people who, some know each other, some don't, from all around the county. So Washtenaw wide, from Ann Arbor to Ypsi, men of color coming together, putting this project together and telling people their story from their community here in Washtenaw County.
He was trying to stay clean. She raised him too. The job she did was amazing. And speaking of amazing, yeah, my wife is amazing. I feel like heaven blessed me with a hell of a lady. My baby holds me down in a world that's so crazy. She helps me stay sane when this world tries to break me. And back when I was broke, she ain't try to replace me. She put me back together like a puzzle to save me. The women in my life, the reason I can do great things. Great things.
I'm so grateful for you. Yeah. I couldn't imagine my life without you. There ain't nothing that I wouldn't do for you.
Our partnership with WMBK is an important way of listening to those we're purporting to help. We've been engaging in this kind of community voice work since 2015. Earlier in this session, Jimena mentioned community focus groups on health disparities that the foundation helped fund. The foundation's vice chair, Betsy Petoskey, noted that our COVID response grants were based on extensive community input. The conversation you heard with Bonnie, Joanne, and Eileen is a good example of the many ways the foundation wants to keep learning from community members and keep sharing their stories. Just as our panel shared successes, we wanted to take an asset-based approach to listening and learning to design a new permanent fund to further empower young Black men in our community. In addition to the valuable insights from our work with WMBK, we engaged in over 30 additional conversations to understand how we can best situate a fund like this to make as much positive and meaningful impact as possible. This community input helped us form the brand new Empowerment Fund. We're so excited to announce this $1 million fund, which has been under development for over 2 years, because it will allow us to work in new and different ways to advance racial equity in Washtenaw County. The purpose of the Empowerment Fund is to support efforts that uplift young Black men in Washtenaw County while promoting their educational success. The foundation is going to take a very broad approach in designing initiatives supported by this fund, and we expect to center the work around education, mentorship, mental health support, and empowerment through the arts. This is another exciting new endeavor that we hope can really contribute to a more just and thriving community for all in Washtenaw County. One of the people who gave us input on the Empowerment Fund and who is also a Leaders of Color Fellow is a community leader who clearly impacts the lives of many in our community. Daryl Johnson is the Executive Director of Mentor to Youth. And in case you're interested in the background that Daryl is using today, I thought I would share the quote by Oprah Winfrey that he uses in every email he sends. "I am where I am because of the bridges that I crossed. Sojourner Truth was a bridge. Harriet Tubman was a bridge. Ida B. Wells was a bridge. Madam C.J. Walker was a bridge. Fannie Lou Hamer was a bridge. Daryl Johnson is also a bridge, and we're so excited for all of you to find out why through his remarks."
I want to say thank you to Ann Arbor Area Community Foundation for this opportunity. Personally, I know that I would not be here without some of the programming that you guys have supported. I often shudder when someone calls me a community leader. Many times I just had a vision of what was necessary in my own life and how to bring about changes. And then we looked across our community and we just see other folks struggling with the same ordeals and the same problems and the same situations. And really, when it comes down to it, it's really about empowerment. It's about empowering our end users. It's about empowering our individuals to be able to solve their own problems, to be able to make decisions that empowers and gives them strength to have things change in their own lives. And Mentor to Youth, we call that raising royalty, a place where you can cultivate your purpose through service, raising up the whole child, the whole community. We looked at this raising royalty and understand that so many times, if people are just given the opportunity to create their own mission, to create their own vision for their lives, they can come through and be successful when we stop trying to dictate and mandate that life be given in a certain realm, that success only looks like this or only looks like that. I think sometimes in our community, we have forgotten that the way we love each other and the way we care for each other is really the end goal. It really is what other communities want to have. And what we really need to make that happen is economic empowerment. We're not looking for Band-Aids. We're not looking for somebody to just come in and throw money at us. We need people that really partner with us and allow us to make decisions that can change our lives. Someone said to me the other day, if you want to change the narrative, you have to change the narrator. And that's what we're looking for, an opportunity to tell our stories and live our lives. Thank you.
Daryl, we so appreciate your wisdom and perspective. Thank you so much. And thanks to everyone who joined us today. I hope you've been as moved and inspired as I have been by all of our speakers today. This is just the beginning of many conversations. In fact, as we reimagine how to use the Foundation's increased capital in service of our community, we'll also be sharing with you new Foundation core values that our board and staff are developing together with the assistance of independent consultants. These core values will drive our work going forward. These values will also inform the strategic planning work that will begin this fall and continue into 2021. So, we look forward to continuing the conversation with all of you, and thank you for being part of this one. We want to thank Russell Video for being an excellent media sponsor for this event. We invite you to continue to engage with us, and here are just a few ways to do so. Review our website, aaacf.org. read the research on capital flow in Washtenaw County that we will be releasing this fall. Let us know if you want to be a part of further focus groups or conversations like this by emailing us at engage@aaacf.org. The Ann Arbor Area Community Foundation was built by the community, for the community, and we are committed to working across the community together. Thank you.